Hello everyone, investment scams rampant. Please vigilant and discerning. Do not trust information from unknown sources. Please make sure recognize two official Capital Securities community, Facebook, Capital Securities, YouTube, Capital Wealth Insights.
Hello everyone, welcome to CUNY Good Night. Today is Friday, October 31st. I'm analyst Jiang Jida. If you haven't already, please remember to like, subscribe, and share for us. If you have any investment questions, feel free to leave a comment. If I don't get a chance to answer your questions today, I'll try to reply to everyone one by one next week. Today happens to be the last day of October, and after today, there are only 2 months left before the year ends. I think some of you might be a bit busy today. Why? Because today is Halloween, and some people might be out celebrating or joining the Halloween parade. Why do I say that? Today at work, while we were taking the elevator, we ran into a pair of parents. They were taking their child out. And what were they going out for? They were going to dress up in Halloween costumes, you know, to get into the spirit of the holiday. What should they dress up as? What was it called? That something with snow. What's that princess's name? I can't remember. Is it Princess Elsa? Or another princess? Anyway, the girl wanted to dress as that princess. And the boy? Boys these days aren't dressing as Harry Potter or pumpkins anymore. I saw a news story today where a family dressed their boy as, who was it? Wang Shijian. They made him look like Wang Shijian. Why? Because Wang Shijian's nickname is Chucky of the Parliament. And recently, Wang Shijian's song has become really popular, so maybe some people will dress up their kids as Wang Shijian or as a princess for Halloween. As for the origin of Halloween, if you don't know, I'll fill you in on that a bit later. Anyway, no matter what, whether you're watching this live or catching the replay, let's just take it easy this week. And remember, today, after Starbucks buy one get one free deal, if you haven't had your drink yet, you might be too late because it ends at 8 p.m. Alright, good evening, everyone. Let me see who's online right now. Mimi, Hui Junjun, good evening, and Ming, hello, Zaimaelv, and also Flying Fish. Then, my Daisy, good evening, and Melissa Marissa, good evening as well. And Flying Fish asked, Teacher Jiang, has her relative bought stocks yet? Oh, not yet. Let me tell you. Every time I gather my family, as soon as my mom buys stocks, the stocks drop and the index falls. There's nothing we can do, sometimes you just can't predict it. Then, as soon as she sells, the index jumps. It's almost always like this, right? So why are both the Taiwan and US stock markets hitting new highs this time? Why? Because she didn't buy any. So, this actually sounds a bit sad, too. So up until now, our relatives still haven't bought any stocks, still haven't bought any. That's why you can see the stock market just keeps hitting new highs. This is the reason. Alright, good evening Hector, and good evening to Grace Leo as well. Good evening to SY Ru, and, who is this? YIH436. This is just a username. I don't even know who's who. YH436. Good evening to you too. And also, and good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Alright. Will Meta's gap up get filled? In the short term it looks pretty unlikely. It looks pretty tough in the short term, but over the long run there's a chance it could get filled. So, the reason it's harder in the short term is because, as we talked about yesterday with Meta, that neckline position, yesterday it was obvious that it closed directly below it. If it had just dipped below intraday and then pulled back up by the close, it wouldn't matter. But yesterday, it broke right through that neckline at the close, so the short-term pressure is relatively high. The short-term pressure is pretty high, but as for when it will fill that gap, I think it might need more AI-related themes or for revenue and profits to really come back. The most important thing is that in third quarter, Meta's earnings per share was affected by a one-time income tax expense. I remember Gauda mentioned yesterday that it was as much as $16 billion. So this caused Meta's earnings per share, even though their revenue met expectations in yesterday's earnings report, to drop sharply by about 83%, down to just over $1 per share. Because of this negative factor, you can see that this quarter's bad news is putting a lot of short-term pressure on their stock price. But if in the fourth quarter, maybe both revenue and profits go back up, then there's a chance that this gap could be filled. It might take some time. I think it will take a while. Alright everyone, good night. First, let's take a look at today's investment highlights. The first is, has the US-China trade war taken a temporary pause? Yes, it's confirmed to be a temporary truce. It's not a permanent ceasefire, and it's not like after yesterday's Trump-Xi meeting everything is suddenly peaceful. It's not that clear-cut. During their talks yesterday, as we analyzed for everyone on the show, they're more like, trade framework negotiations, and it's kind of like being polite first, then getting tough. At the very least, they've reached a preliminary framework agreement. Of course, this is a good thing for both China and the US. But after this framework is established, does it mean the US will stop targeting China? Or that China will just trust the US and be subservient? Not really, because both sides still have things going on under the table. There are still a lot of strategic alliances going on, which I'll talk more about in a bit. So, we can only say that China and the US are just taking a short-term pause for now, but in the long run, that's not the case yet. Also, what does it mean when we say the Santa Claus candidate has been announced? As for monetary policy, what about the chair of the Federal Reserve? In May next year, Powell will be stepping down from his position. Of course, recently, both Treasury Secretary Yellen and Trump have been actively looking for their preferred candidates for the role. So, before this year's Christmas, some familiar candidates will have their second round of interviews with Trump. We'll also analyze for everyone who has a better chance of being selected. As for the industry side, of course, what's more important is the earnings reports. As for the earnings reports, yesterday Meta, Microsoft, and Google all released their financial results. For Meta, as we just mentioned, the EPS was significantly below expectations due to the income tax issue. Microsoft's earnings were also pretty good and noteworthy. However, because their capital expenditures hit a new high in the third quarter, people are worried that these record high costs might create too much cost pressure. So, Microsoft's stock performance yesterday was also below expectations. On the other hand, Google's results were quite solid, with a good earnings performance. So yesterday, it was mainly about Meta. The pressure on the stock market mainly came from the tech sector, especially the big tech stocks, which faced more significant pressure. However, Google provided some support to the market. But today, it's the opposite. At least among the Magnificent Seven, the two main giants, Apple and Amazon, both released earnings reports that performed quite well. This has led to a positive trend in the US stock market, with futures trading showing an upward bias before the market opens. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Over the past couple of days, what highlights have there been in the earnings reports from Amazon and Apple? And finally, let's mention Netflix. Netflix is about to do a 1-for-10 split in mid-November, a 1-for-10 split. How should we look at this? Is it a good idea to buy Netflix before the split? And how did the stock price behave during its previous splits? These are the topics we'll cover in tonight's Chi Good Night program. First, let's look at the economic data. The Eurozone's October CPI year-on-year rate was released at 6 p.m. today. For the monthly and yearly rates, the monthly rate was 0%, slightly higher by 0.2, in line with expectations. The annual rate is also 2.1%, which is also in line with expectations. Overall, we can clearly see that inflation in the Eurozone is currently under control, with the annual rate staying around 2%. Even though the European Central Bank kept its interest rate unchanged for the third time in a row yesterday. The interest rate has reached the 2% level. However, given that inflation continues to stay at this low level of around 2%, it seems that by December, at the end of the year, the European Central Bank in the Eurozone still has a chance to cut rates again. So, everyone can keep an eye on this going forward. At least in the Eurozone, inflation is currently not out of control. It's not out of control at the moment. As for the United States, there may be some impact from tariff wars, which could push up some of the inflation data to some extent. But right now, the bigger issue in the US is the cooling of the job market. The cooling and weakness of the job market, that's the bigger issue in the US right now. Of course, this is also the reason why the Federal Reserve made a preemptive move yesterday by cutting interest rates by a quarter point. That's the reason behind this rate cut. At 9:45 p.m. tonight, watch for the Chicago Purchasing Managers Index for October in the US. The previous figure was 40.6, forecast is 42.3. This number is mainly for reference, since it's still below 50. Generally, above 50 means economic expansion, below 50 suggests contraction. But the Chicago PMI is really just for reference. For the past 3 years, it's always been below the threshold, so overall, its reference value is limited. Basically, you just need to compare whether it's higher or lower than expected, and that's enough. Originally, some of the more important data scheduled for this Friday included personal consumption expenditures, as well as the PCE year-on-year and core year-on-year rates. These were supposed to be released this week, but due to the government shutdown, these numbers probably won't be published today. Still, we'll provide the relevant data for everyone. For U.S. September personal spending month-on-month, the previous value was 0.6% and the forecast is 0.4%. For U.S. September PCE month-on-month, it's 0.3%, with the forecast at 0.3%. The year-on-year forecast is 2.8%. These are forecasted values. As for the core PCE, which excludes food and energy, the expected month-on-month rate is 0.2% and the year-on-year rate is 2.9%. So, whether you look at the forecast or the previous values, the numbers shouldn't differ much from last month's data. Although it seems these figures probably won't be released today, if they are, at least take a look at them. Regarding the expected or previous values, overall inflation isn't out of control at the moment. There's been a slight increase, but it's not to the point of being unmanageable, so there's no need to be overly pessimistic, okay? Let's take a look. Oh, by the way, Amy Lee, good evening. Also, what is EPS? The tax I just mentioned isn't EPS, it's a one-time income tax expense. Maybe I spoke too fast earlier. A one-time income tax expense is not EPS, it's a tax item. This is a one-time income tax expense, which Meta posted yesterday. Now, since it's a relaxed Friday, I'll answer a student's question. If you missed Starbucks buy one get one free deal, don't worry, it only lasts a couple of days. Another thing, someone asked, hey, why is it that for Halloween, why did I say at the beginning of class that there might be fewer people joining a live class today? It's probably because some people are out participating in Halloween events, or maybe they're at a parade, or taking their kids somewhere to do some Halloween performances, or maybe all of the above, right? So, where did Halloween actually come from? Actually, about Halloween, yesterday, there was the Xi-Trump meeting, right? Trump and Xi Jinping met. After their meeting at noon, they talked for about 100 minutes, and after that, Trump didn't hold a press conference or anything, he just went straight home, hurried back. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping stayed at APEC to continue discussing trade cooperation plans with other leaders. So why did Trump leave right after the meeting, without even holding a press conference, and rush back? Yesterday, we talked about the reason he went back, and honestly, it sounded kinda silly. The reason he gave for going back, why do I say it's silly? He said the reason was, because. He said he had to go back to spend time with his family, that they were going to have a family dinner for Halloween. But let me tell you, this is a really lame excuse. It's just nonsense, honestly. Why? You all know about Halloween? This year, Halloween is around October 31st. Some people also say that November 1st is when Halloween is actually celebrated. Do you know where Halloween comes from? Halloween dates back to around the 18th or 19th century, and maybe there were some. The indigenous peoples of the Americas had their own rituals for honoring their ancestors. Then, as you know, some immigrants from America, Britain, or Europe came over. When they immigrated, they were usually associated with the church. Some church members came over. The church came, maybe to spread their faith or to integrate into the local community. So, there would be some church activities, and because the local indigenous people had their own ancestor worship rituals, the church would try to combine these practices. They would merge them together, at least to some extent, in order to promote their faith. It was somewhat like an attempt to govern the indigenous people, or to rule over them, so that the cultures could be more fully integrated. So, they would use some of the local culture and customs, and then combine them with church activities. In the end, this ancestor worship festival in Mexico became known as the Day of the Dead, a day dedicated to honoring the spirits of the deceased. What does it mean to have a day for honoring the dead? This Halloween, also known as the Day of the Dead, is a day when, according to their beliefs, all the souls of deceased family members and loved ones return from the underworld to the world of the living. On that day, the spirits of those who have passed away come back to visit their living relatives. So, it's believed that on this day, the departed return to the world of the living. So, why do people dress up in scary costumes? Some might dress up as devils, witches, hunters, or even vampires. Why is that? Because there's a custom that says, on that day, all the spirits of the deceased will come up from the underworld. Since they're ghosts, after all, people. People are afraid of ghosts, right? Because people fear ghosts, to scare them away, they dress up to look frightening, with green faces and fangs, to scare off these spirits. That's why, on Halloween, people dress as monsters and ghosts, paint on fake blood, wounds, and similar things. They make themselves look really scary, all to frighten away the spirits of the dead kings who are said to return. If you don't want to be haunted by these ghosts, you have to scare them off, so you dress up to look even scarier than the ghosts themselves. That's basically how Halloween originated. So to put it simply, you can think of Halloween as being similar to the Ghost Festival in Eastern societies. During the Ghost Festival, isn't there a ritual to honor wandering spirits? You make offerings to the good brothers, and maybe on the 1st or 15th day of the 7th lunar month, the spirits come to eat, and you have to host them, and so on. That's the general feeling, spirits returning during the Ghost Festival. So when I said yesterday that Trump said he was going back to celebrate Halloween, it sounded a bit ridiculous. You get the idea. Some people go home to be with family during the Ghost Festival. But the main reason for the Ghost Festival isn't really family reunions. It's more about making offerings, maybe to wandering spirits or deceased relatives. So if you say you go home to reunite with family during the Ghost Festival, it feels a bit odd, right? If it were Tomb Sweeping Day, then you take your family to visit graves. That makes sense. But for the Ghost Festival, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, "Teacher, today I can't come to class today because I have to go home for the Ghost Festival." That sounds weird, right? That's why I said, when Trump said yesterday he was going to spend Halloween with his family, it felt odd. In the US and Western societies, Halloween is basically a ghost festival, and then you say you'll spend it with your family? That's why there are so many ghost stories now. Just to add a bit more, since it's Halloween, that's it for today. Good night to everyone working and to the staff. Ghosts are said to fear bad people, so some dress up as villains. But people themselves can be scary. There are many factors. Now, let me answer a student's question. Yesterday, a student we call Edison Online left several comments, so I reviewed them. Basically, in a nutshell, he said something like, given the current situation, like how the economy isn't doing so well, and inflation just keeps going up, and there's constant borrowing, he asked, is it better to just live alone and take care of yourself, or to get married and have a partner, but not have kids? Would that be better? Raising kids is expensive, right? With inflation and living costs rising, and education quality not always great, is it like this? Society today isn't always friendly to people with kids, so maybe it's better not to have children and just live alone. Let me tell you something. Let me just briefly share my thoughts. Honestly, whether it's better to be single or to have kids, it's kind of like, actually, I think someone tagged me and asked about this a couple of days ago. The other day, I was asked a question, is it better to rent a house or to buy one? So actually, I think these two things are really two sides of the same coin, they're just opposites. Whether you want to buy a house or rent one, whether you want to be single or have kids, it really comes down to the same kind of decision. I think it all boils down to one simple thing. Do you have enough money? Is your financial situation solid? If you're financially well off, of course you can buy a house, and you can do a lot of financial planning. If your finances are really abundant, then having one child or even 10 children wouldn't be a problem. But if you look at your financial situation and think, hey, with my current financial status, my standard of living, or my asset management, it's just not the right time to buy a house or have kids, then just don't do it. So, I think whether or not to have children, whether to have an only child, or whether to buy a house or rent one, these are all two sides of the same coin. There's no absolute answer, it's all relative. It really comes down to whether you can handle the responsibilities that come with buying a house or having children. Everything has pros and cons. Buying a house has advantages, but you might end up paying a mortgage for life, which can be exhausting. With children, some say kids are a sweet burden, but when it gets too heavy, you'll feel a lot of pressure. So you have to weigh things and consider your own situation, since everyone's circumstances differ. It's the same thing when it comes to investing. You can't just invest in the Magnificent Seven today, buying Meta, Google, Microsoft, or Apple. Every stock has its own pros and cons. It can go up, but it can also lose value. You might get stuck holding it, or you could make several times your money. Right, so whenever you buy any stock, the first thing you need to consider is whether your financial situation can handle these stocks or this kind of asset allocation. Then, secondly, you have to weigh whether, aside from making money, these stocks could also lose you money, because it's impossible to always win and never lose. There will definitely be times when you lose money. When that happens, can you tolerate that kind of loss? When that loss occurs, will it affect your standard of living? I mean, you might end up not being able to pay for your daily expenses, your children's education, or your parents' retirement funds because you lost everything in the stock market. That would be a problem, right? So you need to carefully weigh all these things. After considering the pros and cons, if it suits you, then go ahead and do it. If it suits you, then do it, whether the country is doing well or not, or whether rent is high, housing prices are high, or the index is high. I think these things aren't absolutely decisive. Honestly, the rich are still rich, right? That's basically the idea. So, let me answer Edison's related question. Whether it's about buying a house, renting, having an only child, or even investing, it's all the same situation. Alright, next let's take a look at this Trump issue and the China-US trade war. Hey, Zhangjiaxiang with you, Yulin bro, good evening. Well, good night, Zhangjiaxiang. Zhangjiaxiang, are you a new viewer? I don't think I've seen this name before. Okay, about the Trump part. Trump, today he started talking about some details regarding the China-US trade war. Yesterday, it was all about the framework, but today he touched on some specifics. He said that Xi Jinping has already started authorizing the purchase of American soybeans, and the numbers he mentioned for the future are very clear. Over the next 3 years, they will buy 2,500 kilotons of soybeans each year. This also includes things like sorghum and other agricultural products, and they might even agree to buy American energy products. He said this involves massive deals, especially in Alaska's oil and natural gas are included in this, so whether or not Xi Jinping, after going back and finishing talks with Trump, will actually follow through on what they negotiated, starting to buy American soybeans, American sorghum, or American energy like oil and gas, we don't really know. But if they do make those purchases, to some extent, this would be a plus for the harmony of the US-China trade war. If they really do make those purchases, then of course, the US would be more likely to approve the export of high-tech chips and related equipment, which I think would be a positive move. So, it's a give-and-take concept. Just a reminder for everyone, in 2024, US natural gas only accounts for 5% of China's total imports, and US oil only makes up 2%. That's why the US has always hoped that, in order to balance the trade deficit, China would make large-scale purchases of American energy products, which would actually be enough. But China hasn't done that. Instead, they've been buying from others. Maybe they're buying from Russia or other countries. So, it's possible that US natural gas and oil could become part of this US-China trade war, and maybe Xi Jinping will order some purchases this time. Also, China's Ministry of Commerce, as usual, talked a lot today about the US removing restrictions on China's fentanyl. This was mentioned yesterday. But the main point is this sentence. In Chengdu, as we mentioned, the extension of the reciprocal tariffs was originally set to expire on November 10th, which would have led to new negotiations. But this time, they announced it early, half a month ahead of schedule, and directly told everyone that the original November 10th deadline for the reciprocal tariffs would be postponed. But for how long will it be postponed? This time, it's not a 90-day or 6-month extension, it's a full year. No tariffs will be imposed. The reciprocal tariffs, like if I charged you 145% and you charged me 125%, won't be applied. The extension lasts a year. China has also suspended export controls, so rare earth exports to the US resume. In exchange, both sides agreed to postpone reciprocal tariffs for a year. Both parties will also stop the 301 investigations into sectors like maritime logistics and shipbuilding. Those investigations are now off the table. They've also properly resolved the TikTok issue. So, looking at the big picture, for this coming year, the trade war is cooling off in the short term. There's a temporary truce, a temporary easing of tensions. But in the long run, the competition isn't going anywhere, neither side is backing down. Alright, has anyone thought about why they decided to impose these controls or extend things for a year? If things are going well, why not extend it for 2 years or cancel it? Why do they keep extending it just 1 year at a time, 1 year, then another, then rare earths come up again, and every year it's the same, just 1 more year? There's a reason. It's always 1 year, they don't make it 6 months or 3 months, so why 1 year? Think about it. Starting from November 10th, why do they keep pushing it back by a year? Has anyone thought about what it means to extend it by a year? What does that represent? What does extending by a year mean? It's not about printing more money. Extending it by a year, does anyone remember that next year, on November 3rd, 2026, the United States will have its midterm elections for the House and Senate? So, Trump and Xi Jinping are basically saying, let's agree to this for a year. Anyway, we can't really work out all the details right now. We can't come up with a complete plan, so let's just agree on the general framework. That should be fine. At least this way, we can have some positive interaction, a good start. It's just the beginning, not the end, just the start. Since there's an election next year, we'll have a temporary truce for this year. We'll have a temporary truce, and after a year, once the House and Senate elections are over, we'll see whether the Republicans or Democrats have the majority. Then we'll look at how to approach the next round of trade negotiations. So why did he postpone it for a year? Not 3 months, not half a year, not 9 months, and not 3 years. He postponed it for exactly 1 year. The reason is right here, and I think this is a big part of it, because when that year is up, it will coincide perfectly with the end of the election. The answer will be clear, so how will they negotiate next year? They'll wait until after the election to talk. So to some extent, we can see that in the coming year. In the coming year, the trade war between China and the United States probably won't deteriorate further. At least, it will be kept at a relatively, let's say, a good starting point, a good framework. But during this year, some people might still stir up trouble from time to time. Maybe Trump will suddenly decide to impose some new tariffs, and then Xi Jinping might respond, saying, well, if you're going to impose tariffs here and there, then I'll do the same to you. So basically, this year will just be about playing out this kind of back and forth. But as for whether things will get much worse or become really serious, I don't think that's likely, because after all, there's an election coming up next year. So, postponing things for a year is actually very important, and there's a reason for this one-year delay. As for what the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs said about the G7 forming some kind of critical minerals alliance, and urging the G7 to stop playing these exclusive games and not to disrupt the economic and trade order, honestly, what they say to the G7 doesn't really matter, because China itself is also out there looking for resource-rich countries. They're also forming their own little economic and trade circles with African countries, so you can just take this for what it is. In the end, everyone is just developing in their own way. Lastly, let me mention Besant. Of course, Besant will provide some candidate lists for the chairperson of the joint sessions related to his first or second interview. As for the fundraising right now, it still looks like those three people are the most important: the former director, the current director Waller, and also the current economic advisor Hassett, who has a better chance. As for the current Rees Bowman, is it possible? Bowman also has a shot. There's also someone who seems to be an executive at some investment firm called something like Ray or the like. I don't think that person has much of a chance. Anyway, just keep those three in mind. As for whether Besant will take the position, Besant won't. Basically, it's unlikely that he would take on this mess. You know why? Even though Trump really wants Besant to be the Fed chair, smart people all know the truth. Even regular folks know that being the Fed chair, this position, is basically a dead-end job. It doesn't matter if you don't take it, but once you do, Trump will be watching you under a magnifying glass non-stop. He'll keep saying, you need to cut rates, you need to cut rates, you need to cut rates. And you can't be completely independent. So you'll be under pressure from all sides: external pressure, economic pressure, public pressure, and even pressure from other countries. In the end, you'll end up totally tied up and unable to act freely. So it's actually the right call for Besant not to take the job, because if he did, it would be a big deal, and he probably wouldn't get along well with Trump. Basically, whoever takes the job is in for a rough time. That's just how it is. Whoever takes it is asking for trouble. As for Abe, he probably doesn't want to take the fall for this either, so he went to be the finance minister instead, which I think is fine. His main expertise is more on the investment banking and finance side, not so much in monetary policy. If you look at his background, he came from private investment banking, not from the monetary policy field. So it makes sense that Besant didn't want to take the Fed job. I think it's actually a good thing, really, so it's pretty simple. Next time, if your boss, let's say, hypothetically, comes to you and says, "Hey, so-and-so, let me tell you, there's a job opening and I want you to take it." So, what do? Maybe you weigh your options and realize this job isn't right for you, or maybe the position is just a dead end. What should you do then? You feel awkward turning your boss down, so who should you learn from? Learn from Besant. How did Besant talk to Trump? Besant told Trump, "Boss, my expertise is in fiscal policy. My main focus is investment banking. So if you put me in charge of monetary policy, I really can't do much. Plus, my expertise just isn't in monetary policy, so you should probably find someone more qualified for that." That's the vibe you want to give off. You want your boss to understand that the reason you don't want to take on this job is because your expertise is in this area. If you put me over there, it would be a total mismatch. So, if I stay at my original position, I can really give it my all. Right, because our areas of expertise are different, so it's better to leave the job to someone more suitable. That's basically the idea. You can try discussing this with your boss. If one day, unfortunately, you really have to rotate to another position, and it just so happens that the work is something you can't handle, this is the kind of conversation you should have. Just think about how Besant would talk to Trump. Start with that idea. What's the current probability of a rate cut? It's at 4.1, and the terminal rate is 3.7%, up slightly. This is likely because the December rate cut is unlikely. The expected number of cuts by year-end is 0.6. The US dollar index is up 0.05%, near the 50-day moving average. This period of volatility is unchanged. As for geopolitical risks, there's no need to overthink it. The Israel-Hamas situation is still at a stalemate, and it seems like things have cooled down. Both sides have cooled off. The Ukraine-Russia conflict isn't making any new waves either, so it's pretty much the same story. As for Lebanon, there's even less to pay attention to. Recently, Israeli troops entered southern Lebanon and carried out some unusual attacks, resulting in one death. Because of this, the Lebanese president has ordered the military to start preparing a response. Honestly, these developments don't have much impact on overall geopolitical risk anymore. It's really minimal, just some very sporadic fighting, and for now, it doesn't look like things will escalate. So, crude oil prices continue to fall today, down another 0.23%. The monthly, seasonal, and even the 200-day moving averages are all in a bearish alignment. This trend hasn't changed at all. Let me remind everyone, just a quick reminder. Today is Halloween, right? After Halloween, which is the Western holiday for ghosts, starting next Monday, the US will officially switch to what's called wintertime or standard time. So usually when wintertime begins, you'll notice that everything will be pushed back by 1 hour. Whether it's US stock trading or economic data releases, all will be delayed by 1 hour. For example, non-farm payroll numbers are usually announced at 8:30 p.m., but after winter time starts, they'll be released at 9:30 p.m. This applies to all US data releases, like PCE, CPI, and other economic indicators. They'll all be delayed by 1 hour. Since the opening time is pushed back, the market opening will also be delayed by an hour. So when it comes to trading, starting next week on November 3rd, our show will also be pushed back by 1 hour. This is to align with the opening of the US stock market and the release of economic data. So the live broadcast will be delayed by 1 hour and will only start at 9 p.m. So everyone, don't leave the studio. Don't rush in too early. Don't come in at 8 o'clock. Starting next Monday, the show will be pushed back to 9 p.m. This is just a reminder for everyone to pay special attention. Now let's take a look at the earnings reports. Amazon's earnings report is actually quite impressive, and it could provide some bullish support for the US stock market today. He said that in the third quarter, revenue was $180.2 billion, up 13.4% year over year. As for the expected EPS, cloud services, advertising, online sales, and the marketplace, all of these performed well. The most important thing, and what the market is most concerned about, is the revenue from the cloud division. The cloud division's revenue reached $33 billion, which is pretty good. A 20% year-over-year increase, better than expected. So, as before, I'll include the top 3 major cloud companies for comparison. This includes companies like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. This time, they all released their earnings reports. Today it's Amazon, and just yesterday it was Google and Microsoft. Google's cloud business revenue grew by 34% year over year, while Microsoft's grew by 40%. So, by comparison, Amazon's 20% year over year growth is a bit lower. Even though it's lower, since the other two are above 30%, it's still worth paying attention to. Still, a 20% increase is at least better than expected. In addition, they're projecting fourth quarter revenue to reach between $206 billion and $213 billion, which is also a year-over-year growth of 12%. Again, better than expected. As for cloud revenue, next quarter is expected to grow from $33 billion to $36 billion. That's an 18% year-over-year increase in billions of US dollars. EPS is growing too. Looking at the financial report, whether for the third quarter, full year, or fourth quarter, the performance is solid across the board. But there's something even more important. For these big 7 companies, we always watch if they're adjusting capital expenditures, raising or lowering them. If they raise their capital expenditures, it means they're optimistic about the future economy because orders keep coming in, so they have to increase their capital spending. On the other hand, if they cut back on capital expenditures, it means their orders are shrinking, so they don't need to spend as much. Right now, it looks like, whether it's Google, Microsoft, Amazon, or even Meta, which just reported yesterday, regardless of whether their financial results are good or bad, their capital expenditures are all going up, and from what I can see, the increase is roughly around 5% to 10%. For example, Amazon this time, you can see they said their total capital expenditure for this year will be raised to $125 billion. That's an enormous amount. Converted to new Taiwan dollars, that's 3 trillion. The previous estimate was under 120 billion, but now it's 125 billion, a full 7 billion more. They also said that in 2026, next year, capital expenditures will be even higher. So under this kind of premise, you'll see that Amazon's stock price jumped about 10% in pre-market trading today. Even though it dropped 3.23% yesterday, this neckline is still holding up. As long as this neckline hasn't been broken, there's no need to worry too much. Just keep an eye on this neckline. Just take a look at the price on this chart and you'll get a rough idea of how much it is. Even though it dropped 3.23% yesterday, it's still holding above the monthly moving average, which is good. If it jumps 12% or 13% in pre-market trading today, maybe there's a chance it could challenge the previous high. So overall, looking at the big picture, it's actually not bad because after all, its revenue and profits in the third and fourth quarters were pretty impressive, especially with the significant increase in capital expenditures. That really gave the market, let's say, a big dose of reassurance. That's the update on Amazon for everyone. Now, as for Apple as well, right? All right, hey, looks like the teacher will have to work overtime, but it shouldn't be too bad. It's 8:30 now, so it should be fine. Basically, we should be able to wrap up within 50 minutes, probably by 8:50 at the latest. Just letting everyone know. Some of you might be wondering, hey, why do we always have to finish our morning shows, like the morning call, within just half an hour? Why do we rush to wrap it up in 30 minutes? Well, there actually is a reason for keeping the morning call to half an hour in the morning. It's because there are regulations, sometimes financial regulations, that say you can't do analysis in the half hour before the market opens. The half hour before the market opens, analysis isn't allowed. And after the market closes, for half an hour or even an hour, you also can't do analysis. That's why the show starts in the morning from 8 o'clock to 8:30, and we have to wrap it up quickly because the market opens at 9 o'clock. And then at 8:45, the pre-market session also starts. So basically, if you count back half an hour from the 9 o'clock market open, the show basically has to end. You can't do analysis anymore. But for the evening show, it's not as strict. In the evening, there aren't as many regulatory restrictions, so even if the US stock market opens at 9:30, we don't have those kinds of regulations. That's why sometimes we can share a lot more information with everyone, and during the sharing process, we can go into more detail, and the atmosphere is more relaxed and not as rushed. So sometimes you might notice, hey, when I host that show, every time I start talking, I just keep going half an hour, wow, 40 minutes, wow, 50 minutes, wow, and some hosts even talk for almost an hour. There's a reason for that. It's because there aren't really any time constraints. That's basically how it is. So if you have time to listen, you can join live and ask questions. If you can't make it, that's totally fine too. You can just watch the replay whenever you have time. All right, let's take a look at Apple. Apple is really important. Hey, good evening, Zayayu. Glad you made it to the live stream. Let me see, besides not being able to see the data, Powell emphasized that there probably won't be a rate cut in December. Is that mainly to keep inflation expectations from rising? Of course, that's also a possibility. But if you say he shouldn't rush into cutting rates, I think the most important reason is still that he can't see the economic data. If he can't see the economic data, could it be some conspiracy by Trump? We don't know either because you can't see the data. That means Powell has no way to decide whether to cut rates or not, since he can't see the inflation data, can't see the CPI, can't see the PCE. It's basically like the blind men feeling an elephant. That's the idea here. Whether or not it's Trump trying to prevent the Fed from fully carrying out its monetary policy adjustments by intentionally shutting down the government or withholding data, whatever the reason. If there's less data available, honestly, it's really hard for the Fed to make quick and well-informed decisions. That's why, in both the September and this late October FOMC meetings, in their interest rate decisions, they specifically mentioned to everyone that these two rate cuts were precautionary. They're both precautionary rate cuts. Why? Because they're worried, first of all, about the uncertainty of the tariff war. With the tariff war being unclear, it's hard to tell whether inflation will spike just once, or if it's going to be a long-term, persistent issue. Right now, it's just not clear. The second reason is that because the government is currently shut down, a lot of economic data can't be released. In other words, with no way to publish the data and the uncertainty of the tariff war, they have no choice but to use this approach, adjusting interest rates up or down. This also serves to shut Trump up. Cutting interest rates is generally positive for the economy and stock market. That's the idea. They paused in December because there had already been 2 rate cuts. As people say, things rarely happen more than 3 times. With 2 cuts already, in December they decided to wait for data before making decisions. Also, regarding the tariff war, it seems like the US and China negotiations are moving in a more positive direction now, so maybe in December, just maybe, things will improve. If inflation really doesn't spike any higher, then whether or not to cut rates in December will depend on the data or on the government reopening for business. I think at that point, the Federal Reserve will finally have more complete data, and only then will they be able to confidently decide whether to keep rates unchanged or to cut them. So for December, I think it's simply a matter of waiting until then to see what happens. All right, let's move on and take a look at the next part. Oh, right, next week we have to work late, that's correct? Yes. Oh, you're welcome. Taiwan's legal system is so well established, right? Taiwan's legal system is very sound, but you have to actually understand the law. Only if you understand the law will you realize how solid it is. It's amazing because when you understand the law, you'll realize that some laws, you know? Yeah, that's just how it is. If you don't understand the law, you might end up being kept in the dark about some things. It's a hassle, but no matter what, if you understand the law, you'll be able to protect yourself better. Oh, by the way, next week, because the live stream will be delayed by an hour, so of course in this cold winter, with work ending an hour later, we'll only get off at 10. Since we talk from 9 to 10, we finish at 10, and by the time we get home, even the late night snacks might be gone. Today isn't too bad. I get off work at 9, so I can make the most of getting off early for Halloween and check Apple's earnings report. Apple's revenue is impressive. The performance is really good. Third quarter revenue was $102.4 billion, up 8% year over year, beating expectations. EPS was $1.85, also better than expected. Everything beat expectations, including iPhone sales. Although the year-over-year growth was 6%, which was below expectations, coming in at $49 billion, it might feel like, wow, how did it miss expectations? But actually, there's no need to worry, really no need to worry. When it comes to other electronic products like Mac, iPad, and so on, some did well and some didn't, but overall it's still okay. There really aren't any major problems. Most of the results actually exceeded expectations. As for the tariffs in the third quarter, they amounted to $1.1 billion in costs. And basically, Apple absorbed these costs themselves. This is what Cook himself said. He said it personally. In the Americas, there was a 6% year-over-year growth. In Europe, Greater China, and other regions, most areas saw growth as well. But what's more important here is the Greater China region. As for the Greater China region, it saw a 4% year-over-year decline, which was worse than expected. So the market is worried like, wow, with so many people in the Greater China region, why did smartphone revenue fall short of expectations this quarter? But Cook came out and addressed this. He said there's no need to worry. Why did Apple see a year-over-year decline in the Greater China region this quarter? Specifically a 4% drop, instead of growth like in the US or Europe. He said it's because of the iPhone Air, the thinnest one. That phone actually looks pretty good to me. It's a true showcase of craftsmanship at its finest. The iPhone Air was released later in China because it uses that card. It's not a physical SIM card, but an eSIM. I know that it was only in early October, around the beginning of October, that the Chinese market started to allow the use of eSIM cards. So now China Unicom, China Mobile, and so on have opened up support for it, which means the iPhone Air can now be used. It was only in mid-October that it started being released in China, so that's also why the Air model was launched later. They said this has affected revenue in Greater China. Now, looking ahead, what's important is the future. Looking forward to 2025, for the whole year, this year's total revenue is $416 billion, which is pretty good. A 6% increase year over year. And he also said that the iPhone 17 is selling like hotcakes. Cook himself said this. He said the iPhone 11 is a big seller, and revenue for the fourth quarter is expected to grow by 10% to 12% year over year, reaching nearly $140 billion, which is a lot and better than expected. He also mentioned that the situation in Greater China will shift from what was previously a decline. It will turn into growth, and they plan to upgrade Siri next year as well. So overall, the outlook is relatively positive and optimistic. Revenue and profits in the Greater China region, as well as shipments, are all expected to rise. In fact, the outlook for fourth quarter revenue and profits is also leaning positive. All because of the iPhone 17. Sales are through the roof, really through the roof. So overall, I think Apple's pre-market price today is also up about 2% to 3%, staying above the 20-day and monthly moving averages, steadily climbing higher, steadily climbing higher. It looks like today it's going to hit a new high again. It really seems like it's about to set another new record. But as it hits a new high, of course, you don't need to chase it aggressively. Same old advice as always. When all companies are at historical highs in the index at this stage, you need to stick to a principle. That principle is, when there's good news and the price surges, you don't need to chase it. But if there's a pullback and it comes close to, say, the 10-day, 20-day, or quarterly moving average, you can consider going all in. That's when you can try testing out some long positions. Then, if you buy and it holds steady, that's fine. Just hold on to it and make sure you set your take profit and stop loss points properly. That's enough. So, when there's a pullback, you need to be brave and buy. But if there's a sharp surge or strong momentum, remember to sell first. Sell first, then buy back in. Sell first, then buy back in. Right now, you can only do this kind of short-term back-and-forth trading. Long-term swing trades look pretty risky at the moment, so you should only go in for short-term trades. Keep it short. Also, coordinate with news, and as earnings reports come out, adjust your positions accordingly. That's basically the idea here. Apple still looks strong today. From what I see in pre-market, we're above $276. So basically, it's maintaining this situation. Yesterday, it had a small gain, and at least in terms of fundamentals, it's performing pretty well. Hopefully, just like what Cook said in the fourth quarter, will it really be possible? An annual growth of 10% to 12%, we'll just have to wait and see, just wait and see. If the performance is good, I think when the fourth quarter earnings report comes out, Apple's stock price might go up another round. Now, I remember a long time ago, we told everyone, yeah, what you said was right. Law is there to help those who understand the law, so everyone should know at least a little. Everyone needs to know. Back when we were students, I don't know if you all did this, but since I study business, studying finance, business management, or business in general, sometimes you have to learn things like corporate law, then accounting law, and what else? Not just accounting, but also corporate law, and there's another one called commercial law, not the other kind of commercial, but the law related to business. So you learn all these business-related things. Later on, as you gradually enter the workforce, you'll realize that in society, you'll inevitably run into all sorts of issues, big and small. A lot of the time, teachers might warn you that you could get scammed, or you might actually encounter a scam. Or maybe you get into disputes with others, or even get hurt. For example, you might get into a car accident, which is actually really common. Maybe you're just driving along and someone sideswipes you for no reason, or sometimes you accidentally bump into someone else, or someone bumps into you. So car accidents happen a lot. Lawsuits, legal issues related to car accidents are the most common, and they do happen. So for these kinds of things, you really need to have some basic understanding. Of course, we all hope we never have to deal with them, but at least if one day you're unlucky enough to run into such a situation, you'll know what to do. You'll know which laws are there to protect us. For example, if you get into a car accident, what should you do? You need to call the police, you need to take photos, right? You need to contact your insurance company, you need to get certain documents like an initial assessment form or an accident report or an appraisal report and so on. You have to get all of these ready. And if you're injured, you need to see a doctor. Keep all your receipts and documents, and make sure you have everything prepared for the insurance claim. Get everything ready before you go to court, or before you make a claim against the other party, or file an application with the company. No matter what, you need to be fully prepared, so that if you ever run into a legal issue, you won't be left clueless, thinking, oh no, what do I do now? What is this? I've never dealt with this before. Exactly, because you've never experienced it, that's why you need to do your homework ahead of time. Oh, the law protects those who understand it. So we're not saying everyone needs to be as familiar as a lawyer or prosecutor, able to recite the entire legal code and quote every article, like Article 172, Section 3, Clause 2 of the company law. You don't need to memorize all that. But at the very least, you should know the basic laws that protect your own life, property, and safety. You just need to have some basic understanding, and I think that's enough. What does it mean to have a basic understanding? To put it simply, when you get into a dispute with someone, you'll have a general idea of which points you can use to argue your case. You can say things like, hey, what you're saying now is damaging my reputation. Or you're accusing me of a public offense. Or you're saying I'm guilty of defamation. Or you're making a false accusation, and so on. Hey, you just touched me, that's assault, you pushed me, that's causing injury, I got hurt. Then the other person will probably think you know the law and won't dare to mess with you so easily. That's basically the idea, so yeah, you still need to know the basics. Also, hi Caesar, good evening, and also, let me bring up something about this stock split thing with Netflix. The Netflix stock split is coming up on November 10th. If you own shares of my nephew's company before November 10th, you can participate. After the new shares are split, they'll be distributed to you on November 10th, and starting from November 17th. New shares will start trading from then on. This time, the announcement is for a 10-for-1 split. Right now, the stock price is about $1,100, so after a 10-for-1 split, it's basically 1 to 10. That means from a high of $1,100 per share, after the split, it becomes $110 per share, but you'll have 10 shares, so your total value doesn't change. The total value and total cost always stay the same. Nothing changes. It just makes the price 1/10 of what it was. All right, so here's the key question. Should you participate in this kind of stock split? Not necessarily. Some companies, after a stock split, will keep going up. There are quite a few examples like Amazon, Apple. Apple has split several times, and Amazon has split several times too. Then there's Tesla. I think I remember they did a split as well. Usually, after the split, some of these stocks do pretty well and go back up. But Netflix is a bit different. I took a quick look back in 2024, well, 20 years ago, and in 2014, so about 10 and 20 years ago, they each did a stock split once. If you pull up Netflix's weekly K-line chart after each split, you'll notice something pretty interesting. Every time they do a split from a high point after the split, the stock usually goes into a consolidation phase, just consolidating and consolidating for quite a while. Typically, it consolidates for about a year, and then boom, it surges again. And when it surges, it really surges, a big rally all the way up. The last two times were just like this in 2004 and 2014. After the split, the stock started dropping. It didn't just consolidate. It kept falling with a slow, grinding decline. Only after about a year did it finally start to rise again. Can you handle a year of choppy consolidation? It takes that long for shares to settle, for everything to shake out and positions to get clean. It takes about a year. Can you wait? Whether people wait or not is up to each person. Whether things play out the same way this time, we don't know. We're just sharing what happened in the past for reference. In 2004 and 2014, that's how it played out. Now, what about Netflix? Many people have it at home, right? So it's installed in many homes. Some people might use one account for 3 or 4 people to watch, but anyway, Netflix, lots of people are watching it, right? Tons of people are watching. Actually, they've released a lot of great original shows too, and many people watch them. Like before, didn't they win some kind of Golden Bell Award? Or was it the Golden Horse Award, or some other Golden Award? Wasn't there a Best Actress? The Best Actress was from one of their productions, right? Best Actress, and then like... Yeah, recently I saw, sometimes Facebook runs ads. There's this show called The Ghost Bride. The Ghost Bride. It actually has a pretty big cast. Of course, I'm not doing a paid promotion or anything. It's just that I happened to watch it. I just finished watching it on Netflix, that The Ghost Bride. I thought it was pretty good. The reason I watched it was because of the lead actors. Do you know who? It's Angelica Lee and Shu Qi. And then there's also Si Yingxian, the chubby girl from The Teenage Psychic, and also from My Dear Ex. I think she's really good at acting, so Si Yingxian is in it too. Shu Qi is in it, which is pretty awesome, and then Angelica Lee as well. These are all top-tier actresses, award winners, or really seasoned actors. So I think The Ghost Bride is actually quite a good show. There's 9 episodes on Netflix, and after watching it, I thought it was really good. I recommend it to everyone. If you're on vacation or have nothing to do, you should check it out. Or you can just watch one Chengjia's food videos for fun. As for The Ghost Bride, it's not a horror movie, okay? It's not a ghost film. It's actually a pretty unique legal crime drama or something like that, so you can just check it out. Now, as for Netflix, what's special is this. Before the stock split yesterday, it dropped by 1.04%. But the 200-day moving average was broken today. Actually, it broke yesterday, and it stayed below the 200-day moving average yesterday. But because of today's 1-for-10 stock split, the US stock market saw Netflix's pre-market price go up a bit, rebounding by about 3%. It bounced back up to the 200-day moving average, so of course, getting back above the 200-day moving average is a good thing. But you still need to keep an eye on it going forward. Just like I've told you before, holding above the 200-day moving average does mean there's some level of support. However, after the stock splits in 2004 and 2014, it usually took about a year of consolidation before it really took off. So whether you want to participate in the split is up to you. It's your personal choice, or you can wait until after the split. If it drops below $110, you can gradually buy in at lower prices and slowly build your position. I think that's also a valid approach. So there's really no absolute right or wrong here. History can be used as a reference, but things won't always play out exactly the same. At least it gives us something to go by. That's an additional note about Netflix. Now, to wrap up, I'll add a few more companies: Coinbase, Reddit, and Eli Lilly. These 3 companies all reported third-quarter earnings that beat expectations. So I wanted to share that update with everyone. In US pre-market trading, Amazon is up 13% before the open, which is high. Western Digital is up 10.817%. These gains are driven by strong earnings. Bitcoin and Coinbase, as mentioned, also beat earnings expectations, and Coinbase is up 4% pre-market. LyondellBasell is up 7%, Warner Brothers up 3%, and Netflix up 2.38% pre-market. That's mainly due to the positive news from your stock split. As for the more important Magnificent 7 stocks, Nvidia and Apple are both up 2%. Oracle also rebounded by 1.79%. On the downside, only Dexcom dropped significantly, falling 12% because its earnings report fell short of expectations. Active Holdings fell by 7%, also for the same reason. Earnings report issues caused several US stocks to drop in pre-market trading. But looking at today overall, if Amazon, Apple, and also Nvidia and others all go up, then the US stock market should perform well today. Performance is good overall. Careful position management is safer and important. The Dow Jones Index dipped 0.23% yesterday. It's still above the monthly and quarterly moving averages. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index fell 1.53%. It's also above the monthly moving average. After this consolidation, I think, there's still a chance for it to reach new highs. It's just that if it pulls back, you can look for another buying opportunity. As for the Magnificent 7 index, yesterday it dropped sharply by 2.73% because Meta fell by 11%. So the index went down, but fortunately, the 20-day moving averages haven't been broken yet. So let's watch today and see if, with Amazon, Apple, and Nvidia leading the way, the Magnificent 7 index will make another push upward. In the ongoing process of the index reaching new highs in the future, the Magnificent 7 will still play a very, very important role as the confidence leaders, right? Alright, that's all for today's English group content, bringing you the latest updates before the US stock market opens. Before you leave, remember to like, subscribe, and share. Also, a quick reminder, next Monday, the Suey Good Night program will be postponed to 9 p.m. because of the switch to winter time. So, see you next Monday at 9 p.m. Wishing everyone smooth trading. Bye-bye.
Our company has no improper financial interests in the individual securities recommended or analyzed. The information in this program is for reference only. Investors should make independent judgments, evaluate carefully, and bear their own investment risks. If you don't want to miss the latest market updates, be sure to turn on the notification bell and hit subscribe. In addition, we have plenty of great video content on both Facebook and YouTube. Don't miss out. In our group, we share in-depth explanations of global financial events with you every day.